All right. Today is the 7th of November. 7th? Monday after gun season. So, I don't know if I'm going to mash up all the videos and all the footage and everything that I took and just kind of do a thing on my take, but the long version, which is going to probably end up being, is I went to Zaleski State Forest to go deer hunting for gun season. I haven't been off for gun season in 15-ish years. Maybe less than, no, like 12 years maybe. No. Because last time I was off for gun season, I was laid off. And I killed a lot of deer that year. But I think that was actually the year, no. The year I killed my 11-pointer? No, it was the year before I killed my 11-pointer. Was I laid off? I don't even know. I've lost time. So anyway, I went to a place in South Central Ohio. It's more central, but they call it Southern Ohio. Called Zaleski State Forest. 25,000 acres of state forest that also has another patch of state land attached to it called Waterloo Wildlife Area, and I think gets close to 6,000 acres. So that connected piece of property was 30,000 acres. Looking at the maps and aerials and topos, my wish list, my wants and desires in how I was going to hunt that property kind of hindered my, I don't want to say success, but I've been out of the game for so long that stepping up into something that is completely outside my norm, not necessarily my comfort level. I can hunt anywhere and I can adapt with the proper information, which that's kind of what happened this past week. I needed information. Now, I went in knowing it was going to be hilly, looking at the maps. The change in terrain was aggressive. We're talking a difference of 200 feet in, 100 feet sometimes. I'm not mountain climbing. I am not set up for, nor am I conditioned, nor do I desire to go mountain climbing. And opening day, I went out before the sun came up. Didn't know, I kind of drove around, scouted the day before. I had a couple targets that I wanted to hit based on maps. So I drove around looking for places to park and access and see how easy it would be to get in and, kind of just feel it out. Get a, I hate the term boots on the ground, but to actually get, rubber road kind of info. And I kind of mentally picked a few places by doing that, and then headed out Monday morning before the sun came up. Was was driving to those places and then drove by another place that I kind of looked at. I'm like, how come there's nobody here? I knew, because it looked like it was going to be one of the easiest places. So it didn't even pick on my radar, my brain radar. So I'm like, this is a quarter mile from any other access that I could see. Fuck it, I'm putting in here. So I put in there and went up. I climbed up the goddamn hill. And absolutely blind. It wasn't even somewhere that I looked that I kind of had on my to-do list on the map. So, but it was raining. So opening day was raining. I don't mind rain. I can hunt in the rain. I can do all that. But I was also camping. The night before, all my stuff got wet. Tent I was using, last minute I decided to go with a different tent, different setup, because when I was planning all this, the conditions were 40 degrees and pleasant, 45, 50 degrees out. So that's how I planned. I knew it was going to get cold. I saw down into the 20s, which that doesn't scare me, but I didn't account for everything getting wet. The tent that I opted to go with to be my main cabin setup is 90% or 80% screen with a rainfly. It's a summer tent. Should have known that. I did know that. But I set up incorrectly, and I spent the rest of the week suffering because of it. So I went in, hunted. I just got in the woods and forgot to. I didn't bring any food. I was wet. I didn't really expect to be that wet that soon and for that long. So, excuse me. But I was out until 2 o'clock, and I was moving 80% of the time. I would stop and kind of check out an area and kind of listen. There was absolutely nothing going on. I didn't hear a shot until 7:30 that morning. The first light was 7:15, 7:14 or something. So usually very close to that you'll start hearing shots. And I'm in a place where I'm 10 miles away from a road and I'm hearing semi brakes or something. Once in a while, if the wind's catching it right, because the low clouds, the way sound travels through those mountains. So I was getting a feel for everything. Now, looking and walking, I looked at a couple of the Google Maps, satellite images, and it all depends on what time of year the image is captured and how long ago it was. So some of the clearings and some of the growth was different, but the general cuts and roads, accesses are they're there, but you can't really see what it looks like from the air. I have used satellite imaging for a lot of my, I don't want to say hunt, but it's more of a boundary kind of thing. I want to find out what is on the edge of what, and then once you get on the ground, it kind of makes more sense. So I was expecting to know more than I actually could absorb from satellite images. And OnX they must use a different time of year image, or an older one, or a newer, I don't know which one it is, but it's very different, and it's very green, and it's hard to pick out trails and roads and access paths and stuff. Because on public land, there are a lot of management and maintenance access roads, and come to find out, Zaleski State Forest, there's nowhere on Zaleski State Forest, every single ridge top is accessible or covered with a logging road. Every single ridge, every single kind of finger or slope into the next ridge has some sort of logging road. I was confused by the aerials, thinking that it was going to be, this absolute virgin, nothing wilderness, but that was unfair to assume. Once I realized all the logging roads are bad. Logging roads they're easy to walk on. They are, for the most part, the easiest path to and from areas. I could also see where they had marked trees, a lot of walnut. They had marked a lot of walnut for, I guess, for removal. They were everywhere. So, and some of them are way down in there. So you got to get a lot of equipment in there to get to those. Some of the access road, or some of the logging paths, not even roads, were unused for not several years, but at least enough for some trees and some growth to grow into and or cover. And there were some logs, some downed trees across that you could tell nobody's logged it in 5 years on the one ridge that I was in. The ridge that I chose it because there was snow on the ground. This is day 2. There was snow on the ground, and there was very few people in the woods. I knew there were 2 people in front of me, and their tracks were fresh and easy to find, and they were the only 2 tracks that were ahead of me from that morning. And I went in early, not sunrise early, but like first light. And there were several tracks that went into ridge tops, into shelves and fingers and things. You could see where people had gone in and kind of looked over the ridge and then come out, but you could also see where there was nobody. So I knew where I wanted to go. I knew what ridge I wanted to check, but there was also a feature on the map, on the satellites, that looked different. It was odd. It kind of looked, in my brain, when I first saw it, I said, oh, that looks like a field. There is 0 agriculture on this property. So it's unfarmable. There's nowhere to go. It had snowed all night. It was snowing when I went in. So the footprints and the tracks and everything were fresh. Everything that I saw was within 4 or 5 hours, except for the tracks that were in front of me. Those were minutes old because I was 150 yards behind the cats in front of me, and I don't know where they went. I think they started hoofing it to get way ahead of me. which is fine. This was an actual access road, a gravel road. So I picked a ridge based on it was going to lead me to that feature. I got halfway down that ridge and then started realizing that I wasn't hunting. I was sightseeing. I was scouting. I was doing, you know, some things that are important to hunting a new area, but I was paying more attention to verifying what my map reading knowledge, my satellite information and everything I wanted to see what those features meant and put them together in my head. And I was spending more time doing that than hunting. Now I was going through, you know, of course I was hunting, but had I been paying attention to the wind, it was windy. Had I been paying attention to the wind and the weather, I would have realized that I needed to stay off of the ridge tops and get down into the bottoms and on some transition fingers and saddles and bowls. So when I found a couple bowls and I decided that this is where I was going to hunt, I had to walk past it. I saw one feature, I saw one shelf. I said, well, I need to get up there. I just want to check that out and see how it plays. Because we're talking these mountains, from the bottoms to the top, top's 1,000 feet, and the bottoms anywhere between 700 and 800 feet. So it's cliffy, or not cliffy, it's mountainy. So I wanted to run the side of this one bowl on this finger of this ridge, and I started doing so, and I'm looking at it and it's shelved off. I'm like, man, this is kind of, you know, and then it was clicking, because you don't spend that much time hunting or in the woods and not knowing what terrain and how deer use hills and how they kind of move around. They're not going to want to go up, down, up, down, up, down. They don't mind if they do, but they're easiest path between 2 points kind of animals. So I'm cruising around this bowl, just looking at it, and I come on this path. I'm like, oh, I'm walking right next to a path. And I saw this path, like, motherfuck, this is beat up. Like, within the past, you know, hour or so, a group had gone through here. And instead of just kind of, you know, playing it, I just got on the path, started humping it down the path. It was loud, it was crunchy, and the wind didn't help, but my wind was blowing pretty much the direction I was wanting to go, or wanting to see where the trail went. So when I got up to the top of that little finger on that ridge, I realized it came down and went into like it was like a soft, it was 950 feet. And it went down to 700 feet in about 400 or 500 feet. So it was, you know, it was slopey, it was nice. But it was a narrow ridge top. No real saddles. It was just yes, no. So I'm looking at it, and I get to the other side. I'm like, oh, look at this bottom. The bottom on the other side of this is where I should have been paying attention to. So I went back. You know, I went on. I'm like, I need to go see what this finger looks like. So no, all I'm doing is taking my wind and just throwing it over the hill where I'm going to be heading, and I'm fucking up my hunt. Plus, I'm making all kinds of noise. The wind was howling at me. As well, I want to go on a little bit further. So I went back, you know, 150 yards back to the main ridge, then went around to the other side of the bowl. Meanwhile, I already, you know, blown all my wind into that bowl, so anything that could have been in there was gone. And when I mean bowl, I'm talking as big as like a football field. In between, you know, and you're standing in nosebleed seats looking down at the 50-yard line. That's kind of how it was. So I needed to go all the way around, so my wind was at my face. Well, meanwhile, I'm watching these trails go back and forth over top of these ridge tops, and then it hit me. You know, I kind of got overwhelmed. I kind of got mad at myself that I had gone so far into these woods not knowing what I was looking for, and the whole time I was getting further and further away from, you know, I was just walking. And I was only wearing, you know, it was 26 degrees, and I was wearing, what was I wearing that day? I think I was wearing a pair of thermals and my hunting pants. That was it. So I was basically wearing just a pair of pajamas, walking through the woods. It was not that warm. So I geared up to move. I was cold, disappointed. I got overwhelmed because I thought I was too far, and then I was checking the time, and I knew I needed to walk a little bit further to check, you know, to see what that feature was. But looking at everything else and kind of replaying it, I knew it was just going to be the side of a mountain that I couldn't get to. That just was, it was different. That's all it was, just the side of a mountain. So once I realized that, I stopped and hunted the backside of that bowl. But I got cold fast. So it was like 3 o'clock. So, well, I'm going to go back up toward the main road, the access road, set up on this side, the downwind side of the first bowl. And anybody moving on the, you know, up and down the trail is going to, you know, blow something up into it. Not knowing that everybody had left the fucking woods because it was cold and miserable out there. I was thinking there was going to be a sea of orange. I was honestly expecting. At first, I thought if I go 3 miles in and then start hunting, I'm not going to see anybody, which was kind of the case. Within the first 3/4 of a mile, there were just footprints and people fucking everywhere. But at the same time, there were deer tracks and shit everywhere. So I was cold, I was miserable, I was tired. I only had one, you know, like 2 snack bars with me, and I'd already eaten those. I'd been in the cold and been wet for like 4 hours at this point. Had just walked 3.5 miles. And I was on my way back up the hill. And then I started hunting. Picking out shelves and starting to look down the hill. And the snow on the trees was so thick and it was so fluffy and so heavy that it was like looking through trees that had leaves on them, so I couldn't see very far. It was discouraging. So then I decided to sit down on the other side of a bowl and just kind of dig in underneath a couple trees where there was some bedding. They were bedding on the other side, on the downwind side of the top of the ridge. Down, you know, a little shelf. And that's what triggered me to like, okay, this is what hunting is. I need to be hunting this way. So instead of looking around, I just picked a spot and said, I need to hunt this and I need to watch because of, you know, whatever. So finally I did, but that was an hour before dark. So kind of half expecting to see something on my way out. I waited till last light was 5:30. I got up, packed out. I had about a 10-minute walk before I was on the main road. I was cold, miserable, and disappointed. I got picked up, packed up, and I started heading to the road at about 5 o'clock. I think sunset was 5:16 or 5:15, 5:12 or something. 5:06. So I get to the access road right at like last light, or not last light, but right at sundown. So I'm not looking for anything. I'm not doing anything because I'm honestly expecting people to be in the woods still. So I snap my gun down. You know, I'm heading out, just kind of walking. Again, cold, wet, mad, hungry, exhausted. And then it started getting darker. And I looked down in this bottom, like there's 2 deer just kind of chilling right there, 1.5 miles from the road. But they were 100 yards away, 200 feet down into this bottom. I didn't even draw. I mean, there's no way I was gonna try to shoot a 44 that far down into the hill, being that cold, that miserable, knowing that I couldn't get down there without exerting extreme amounts of energy to get down and or back up. At this point, I looked down at my watch. It was last light. So I watched them a little bit, and I moved over to try to get a better vantage and just to see what they were doing and which direction they were going. So I kind of did that for a little bit. And then when I couldn't see anything anymore, I just started walking down the road. So I had 1.5 miles to walk up and down these fucking mountains in the dark. It was fine. It took me an hour. Because some of the hills that were uphill were very uphill. So I had to stop for 10, 15 minutes, take a drink, take a breath. And then when I got back, I was kind of half listening. I didn't hear any cars. I didn't hear any car doors. I didn't hear any people. I didn't see any lights. I got to my car. There was nobody around. By the time I got to my car, it was close to 7 o'clock. So I undressed, all my wet, frozen shit, went back to camp, and just prepared to freeze for the night, which I did. So I was disheartened. I was upset. I was mad at myself. So then I decided that I needed to regroup my camp because I shivered. I froze that whole night. So the next day, I rebuilt camp. I did a few things. I went into town. I got a cot because I was laying on the ground. Even though I was laying on the ground with basically nothing around me. The wind was sucking the whatever heat I had in the tent, which was very none. So I found a cart at a Walmart, fucking 35, 40 minutes away from where I was. So I spent all day regrouping. Then the next morning, I mean, that was a nice night. It was like how I expected everything to be. So the next morning, I had a plan. I knew I needed to be off of the ridge tops. I needed to be in the bottoms because of the wind and the food in the bottom. The food is still at the bottoms. All the food's gone off the top. Not gone, all the browse. And when I went in Monday morning, there are acorns still on the ground. Still acorns on the ground. So that's weird. They're probably still something, but it's more of a get lucky kind of acorn find for a deer. So Thursday was going to be my last day to hunt. I went in Thursday with all my sitting gear. I had everything. I dressed for it. I went in, but for whatever reason, I was still uncomfortably cold the whole time. I was not warm and cozy, and I don't know. It was bizarre to me. So I did hunt all day. By the time I got to I wanted to go a little bit further. The bottom where I was hunting is called Og Hollow, O-G-G, Og Hollow. And the place where I saw the deer the previous night, 2 nights before, on my way out, was a connector of Og Hollow. Knowing that I needed to be down at the bottoms, I wanted to see what that looks like. I wanted to see what that felt like down in there. It was about a mile off the road. So instead of getting on the hollow, I went up to the side of the ridge and walked around, which was unnecessary, for one. I was making all kinds of noise and effort, spending a lot of energy. But I was also taking in more. I was actually hunting. And that felt a little bit better than, just going in on a trail and walking until, which is what I should have done, just walked and walked and walked and said, I want to hit this. What I've done in the past. So where I had set up on the north side of, the east side of the first ridge at Og Hollow, the adjacent ridge was a lot of, it looked like, I don't say it looked like it was logged, but it looked like something had blown through, and probably 40% of the trees were down. So it looked like something seriously happened. But there was still snow on the ground because it was on the northwest side. So it didn't get any sun. I was on the southeast side. So I was getting a little bit of sun. So where I was sitting they didn't have any snow. So as soon as I kicked in and sat down, I was on the side of on the slope. So I dug kind of a butthole, kind of a seat in the edge of the soft stuff next to a downed tree. And this downed tree was bigger around than I am. So I was sitting up by the root ball. I was there for no more than 6 minutes, still calming down, and I heard something. I said, maybe that's that creek. And I looked across from me, about 80 yards away, straight in line with me on the other side of that ridge, was a yearling, a young deer, just walking down toward the creek. So I'm thinking, I could take her and just be done. And then I started looking at it, like, no, let's see if she comes closer. I want to see if she comes across the creek. Well, where I was sitting, I could see the edge of the creek, but I couldn't see what happened between the first little drop off and the creek that was 60 yards away. Well, I couldn't find it 80 yards away. So later on, after I got cold and moved around, I went over there to kind of get a feel for the terrain and realized that would have been a mistake. So about an hour before it got dark, I looked at myself and said, this is the last few moments I'm going to have here in Zaleski. I know where I need to go to get out of here. I know kinda where it is, but I also don't want to be trying to navigate it in the dark. So let's just leave now. We'll get to the road right about dark and just kind of see what we see. And I'm glad I did, because I would have been pretty salty and upset if I would have gotten close to, and I wouldn't have been able to get across Shady Run in the dark, even with flashlights. So I got to my car. It was dark. I told myself, you know what, this is it. I'm done. I'm comfortable now. I'm going to be comfortable. I'm going to go get a goddamn hamburger and a beer. So I looked at the Google machines, and there's Burger King up in Nelsonville. I'm familiar with Nelsonville. I've shot their archery tournaments there several years. And I've been through for Hocking Hills and things like that. So, but it's not next door. So I drove up there, got back to camp. Fuck it. I sat in my tent, ate my Big Mac, drank a beer, and waited for tomorrow, Friday. So that night I slept very well, except for whatever reason my CPAP wouldn't stay on. I don't know if it was an issue with my power supply or the power regulator, or if it was temperature. I don't know. But it would go for about 40 minutes and then shut off. And I would fumble with it, turn it on, turn it off, and it would come on. I don't know. I haven't looked into it. I need to probably look into that a little bit more. But Friday morning, I got up at 3 to watch the newest chapter of The Mandalorian, which I'm glad I did. But I spent several hours cleaning up camp and packing and kind of, evaluating everything. And that was nice because I wasn't rushing. But then it started raining at the last minute when I had everything kind of laid out. Everything got wet again, and then it turned into a rush. So I got everything packed, everything ready to go, and then I decided, well, while I'm out here, I'm going to go visit and drive through and see what Vinton Furnace is all about. Because it's just south of there. I didn't want to hunt down there because I honestly expected the crowds down there to be thicker. I expected there to be more people down there. There may have been, I don't know. So I drive through there, and I'm driving through these fucking beat up ass roads. It's just gnarly. My car is not built for that. But I realized I should have, the grass is always greener on the other side. The hills and the ridges and everything are similar. It's cut a little bit different. I think there may be ag on Vinton Furnace a little bit here and there, but for the most part there is not. And there is a hunter's camp at Vinton Furnace. It's just a piece in the middle of the forest that is just cut. They call it Benton Experimental Forest. It was an old, I'm not sure exactly what the use was. I think it was an old iron manufacturing area. Everything out there is called furnace because they had furnaces where they would refine ore into iron. I'm guessing. I need to look into that because it looks neat. There's a couple remnants of the furnaces and the old factories and foundries or whatever. But I'm going to revisit that place because it looked a lot better. I should have done that in the beginning, but I was so excited about learning and understanding and making Zaleski out to be something that it wasn't, and that was all my fault. I don't regret anything. Yeah, I mean, I regret a couple things that I've done, but the whole trip I don't regret. I needed that learning experience. I needed to get back into, and honestly, there's a couple places like in Fallsville that I don't access, that I don't hunt. And I haven't hunted in years. I've never hunted a couple places because of the terrain. That's dumb. I mean, you go where the fucking deer are. That's where the deer are. So that's what I need to do. My next adventure there will be probably Vent and Furnace. My next couple outings at Fallsville, I'm going to push myself to go just past where my comfort level was. I don't know why I haven't. It's dumb. Humans are dumb. But that's my adventure in a nutshell. I learned a lot. I made some mistakes. I saw 3 shooters, and I saw 3 deer that I would have shot anything that come near me. No, I also went shooting. I shot whatever ammo that I had at one of the local ranges. It was an outdoor range, free, I guess. I don't know. But it said it was ran by the Forest Department. I know Ohio has shooting ranges, and I have a license for them, or a pass, or whatever, like $12 a year. But you got to schedule time, but this place, there was 3 other people there, and that was it. Granted, it was a Wednesday afternoon. Glad I did, though, because I got to spend some time with that 44. It's good shooting, as smooth as it could be, but something's weird with it. I don't know if it's how I'm gripping, if I'm squeezing funny, but everything jumps left. I got the rear sight cranked all the way over, and it's still, I mean, it was shooting right at the, I don't know, maybe I was compensating. I don't know. I need to spend some time with it. I should have done that before I went out. So, again, another mistake. But after next week's gun season, we have another gun season next weekend. I may go out. It depends on what's going on. I may go out and just, run and gun Saturday or late Sunday or something, just to see what I can see. Depending on the weather, depending on how I feel, depending on what's going on with family and all that jazz. So, and by family, I mean my wife and son. I don't know. See what we see. Now I gotta go to work. I haven't been to work in 11 days. So, fuck off. I got shit to do.